Okay, so John chapter 4, 43 to 54. After the 2 days, he went forth from there into Galilee. For Jesus himself testified that a prophet has no honor in his own country. So, when he came to Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all things that he did in Jerusalem at the feast. For they themselves also went to the feast. Therefore, he came again to Cana of Galilee, where he had made the water wine. And there was a royal official whose son was sick at Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus had come out of Judea into Galilee, he went to him and was imploring him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. So Jesus said to him, "Unless you people see signs and wonders, you simply will not believe." The royal official said to him, "Sir, come down before my child dies." Jesus said to him, "Go, your son lives." The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and started off. As he was now going down, his slaves met him, saying that his son was living. So he inquired of them the hour when he began to get better. Then they said to him, "Yesterday at the 7th hour the fever left him." So the father knew that it was at that hour in which Jesus said to him, "Your son lives." And he himself believed, and his whole household. This is again a second sign that Jesus performed when he had come out of Judea into Galilee. Okay, so what did we go over last week? Stunned silence. Okay, so last week we finished up with the woman at the well, right? And Jesus had been requested by the men who came out to him to remain there and teach. And he stayed there and taught the Samaritans for 2 days, right? So he was at Sychar in Samaria, and he taught there 2 days. And after those 2 days, he came into Galilee, and we looked at the statement that Jesus testifies that a prophet has no honor in his own country. Ringing a bell now? Right? Remember we were talking about the problem of pastors. And what was the problem of pastors that we talked about?
Where would you like to start?
Yeah. In relation to the text. Yes? What? Right, but we talked about in terms of pastors, you remember I was picking on a guy because he was sitting there, that a pastor might preach on a particular passage over and over again, right? And then we have a guest speaker who says exactly the same thing as the pastor does, and everybody goes, "Wow, I have never heard that before. That's amazing." And the pastor goes, "Ugh." Right? And that happens all the time because we tend to become, and it's not that necessarily that familiarity breeds contempt. It often breeds complacency, right? And so we're it's not that guy is hated by us. That would be nasty, right? But it's that because we know him, because he is familiar to us, we don't pay attention the way that we should. And so you get into, and it is a problem of ritual, where you get used to doing things in a certain way, and you just, it's just that they don't have as much impact on you. We are people who crave the new. I looked at my son pointedly there. Not to slander him. Yeah, that's. I wish Hendrik was here because C.S. Lewis has something to say about that in the Screw Tape Letters, which by the way, there is a phenomenal audio of the Screw Tape Letters that is really well done. And so if you're not a reader, you're just a listener, it's done by Andy Serkis. Focus on the Family does it, and it's really good. It's well worth the listen. Okay, so Jesus goes down to Galilee, and he himself testifies that a prophet has no honor except in his own country. That's saying it not that he is making that testimony, but that he has testified to that. And one of the things I want to draw your attention to, well, first we'll go over the timeline of what's happened so we can get some context here. There is the wedding at Cana, and what happened at the wedding at Cana? Water into wine, right? Jesus goes to Jerusalem for the Passover. And we talked about that. There was tons of people from all over the diaspora and all over Palestine, and they're all at the temple, and he cleanses the temple, right? And that is the opening of his public ministry. Then, over that course of that festival, he teaches and does signs and miracles, right? That's stated in there. And then he goes with his disciples and starts to baptize. And we talked about John the Baptist was receding in his ministry, and Jesus was increasing in his ministry. And then he is returned to Galilee. Okay, so in that context, we read in this passage that because Jesus himself testified that a prophet has no honor in his own country, right? Because of that, he goes into Galilee. And so when he came to Galilee, the Galileans received him. You might look at that passage, and it seems like those two things conflict. That because a prophet has no honor in his own country, Jesus goes into Galilee, and when he gets there, they honor him. But it doesn't say they honor him. It says that they received him. So why do you suppose John is drawing our attention to these two seemingly contradictory statements? What's that? Well, that is probably partially true. Remember, the reason why he leaves Judea is why? Because the Pharisees have heard that he is drawing a lot of people to himself, and so what he does is he withdraws from there. Right? He is starting to get a big following in Judea and drawing the attention of the Pharisees, and is going to be in conflict with the Pharisees, and he withdraws and goes to Judea. But what about the fact that he is received by the Galileans? Isn't that contrary to the fact that it says that you're without honor in your hometown, your home country? Actually, they're more than just curious. Right? Remember, they went to the feast. They saw what was happening at the feast. They are more than just curious. He is a hometown celebrity. And so when he comes into Judea, they receive him as hometown celebrity. He is local boy made good. And so he is received in that way. But one of the things that you're going to see in John's gospel is John is making a point that these celebrations of Christ, these celebrations of Jesus, are not true honor. They're not the honor that he is to be given. It's not true belief. They have an idea in their mind of who Jesus is, and that's what they're honoring. And we see it even today. How many people say they honor Jesus Christ in false religions and even in false professions? And they lift up Jesus Christ. They wear t-shirts that say, Jesus is my homeboy, right? That's not honor. That's honoring a false deity that they have constructed in their own image, and it is not honoring Jesus Christ. And so when you see him come into Galilee, you see that they receive him, but they don't believe in him. They have no true faith in Jesus Christ, not in his teachings. They see his miracles, and they crave more and more miracles. So when he comes into Galilee, the Galileans receive him, having seen what he's done. Now, we talked about last week the fact that this is one of this saying that a prophet is not without honor except in his own country is one of the sayings that is repeated in all four of the Gospels. It is in all three of the Synoptic Gospels, and John repeats it here. And in the Synoptic Gospels, it's given, the Synoptic Gospels, I think Matthew and Mark, which are very closely linked Gospels, it occurs in the same place at the same time, but in Luke it takes place at another point in time. And so it was a common thing that Jesus said and that was pointed out. And we talked about the fact that the reason for that is, and one of the things that you see is that there is an emphasis on that Jesus, the people that should have known his character and reputation the most, the people that should have respected him the most, the people that should have known that he had a flawless life, they didn't. They didn't receive him. He came into his own, in a more broad sense, as John points out at the very start of his gospel, he came into his own and his own did not receive him. And so there's that emphasis that the people who were most intimate with Christ, who knew him the best, did not receive him. Now, I'm just reading my notes here. Okay, and further beyond that, right? One of the things that you'll notice is that, okay, so you're going to have all of the world does not receive Jesus. The Judeans, the people in Palestine, Israel, does not receive Jesus. The people in Palestine, the people in Judea, the people in his hometown, and you go right down to his own family, right? What does his own family do to him? What's that? They reject him, but they do something specific. While he's in the midst of performing miracles, and all these people are coming to where he is, there's crowds coming to be healed. What does his family do? Right, they come to get him and drag him off. They bring mama to come get him and get him to come out so that they can get him, which would be seriously dangerous because he's got these big crowd of people around him that are calling him a prophet, and they're going to drag him off and lock him up. And that's the thing, is that the people who are most intimate with our Savior, who should know better, they reject him. And that is not uncommon. Jesus says that your enemies will be those of your own household, right? It doesn't matter that they know who you are. It doesn't matter that they see the change in your life. That's irrelevant. Blindness, sin blinds. They are part of this world and they are enemies of the gospel. I always get a kick out of the fact that when Dallas became a Christian, he had worked at StressCon for a long time, right? And he was a long-haired, heavy metal, dope-smoking hippie type, right? I slander him not at all, but I praise the Lord for him. And the guys at StressCon witnessed the change. They were eyewitnesses to the change in Dallas's life. And yet, when talking about Dallas not swearing and going to church and sharing the gospel, what they said to me was, yeah, Dallas has always been that way. Are you serious? And I confronted them. I said, you guys knew him. He worked with you, cursed, swore, the whole bit. He is not the same guy. And they go, yeah, I guess that's right. Right? So it's not about the fact that you know the person and their character. It's whether God opens your eyes. And that is where it is. And that's what John is emphasizing. That unless God opens your eyes, you will not see what Christ is, who he is, and what he's doing. So, we go on. And he comes to Galilee. And therefore, when he came again to Cana in Galilee, where he had made water into wine, and there was a royal official whose son was sick at Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus had come out of Judea into Galilee, he went to him and was imploring him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. So Jesus said to him, "Unless you people see signs and wonders, you simply will not believe." Okay, so he comes there, and this royal official hears that he's there. Now, Jesus, as we've seen in chapter 2, had performed miracles. He's been performing signs. So he has a reputation as a prophet. And this guy hears that he's at Cana, and so he goes to him to implore him to come down and heal his son. And Jesus says, "Unless you people see signs and wonders, you simply will not believe." Does that mean that if they see signs and wonders, they will believe? Obviously not, right? It's not the nature of the miracle. What Jesus is saying is that you guys need to continually see these things in order for you to have this kind of faith. And how do we know, where have we seen this, obviously, before? In the scriptures. That there was, even though you're presented with miracles, you need to have miracles and miracles and miracles and miracles to constantly reinforce your belief in God. Obviously, the Israelites, right? That it is necessary that they constantly be reminded. Yeah, I know you parted the Red Sea for us, but now we're hungry. Oh, I know that you defeated the Egyptians, but now we're thirsty, right? Well, I know you did this, but now what are you doing for me now? It is like the spoiled child or the jealous husband. There's never enough evidence of the care, concern, and love. It's never enough. Never, ever enough. The spoiled kid whines, complains, goes on. You give them something, and 5 minutes later, right? The discontent wife goes, "What have you done for me recently? What are you going to give me now? It's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. Prove your love. Prove your love. Prove your love. I don't believe you. Do something more." Right? And that is what it's saying here. And there is no real, genuine love for the character. There is no trust there. There is no faith there. And you see the contrast between this kind of faith that constantly requires reinforcement and that of Job. Right? You see Job, who was prosperous, then everything is taken from him, and he continues, even in crying out for answer, he continues to trust. He says, "My eyes will see my Redeemer, my own eyes and not that of another." Right? He still has faith in God and in God's character, even though he doesn't understand why in his terrible circumstances. And you see this difference that in times past, people like Nietzsche and people like that, who saw the devastation of sin in the world that men had been doing, and they say, "Well, that just destroyed my faith. I used to believe in God, but now I don't." Bertrand Russell, who was a noted atheist, right, was asked what he would say to God if he ever met God, which he has now. And he said, "I would just say to him, you never gave me enough evidence." There's never enough evidence. I have been in conversations with people that when you are witnessing to them and you refute every one of their arguments, it's never enough. Because in truth, they don't like God. They hate God. And it doesn't matter what God does, even though somebody should be raised from the dead, they will not believe. Because the belief is not in them. It's not put there by God. Because unless he had granted us the ability to see, we would not believe. We could not believe because we would be dead in our trespasses and sin, and dead people don't respond. Okay, so the man comes to Jesus, the royal official comes to him, and he says, "Sir, come down before my child dies." Now, the translation is, "My son is dead." He has got no hope. Like, he is convinced that his son is a goner. And Jesus says, "Go, your son lives." And the man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and started off. Okay, there's a few things there. One is, obviously, there's a big contrast there between him and the centurion. What's the difference? Faith, that is true. It is faith. What is the difference in the specifics of the circumstance? What did the centurion do?
He said, all you have to do is speak a word.
Right. He was like, I'm not worthy that you should come. He had an attitude of pure humility that I am not worthy. All you got to do is say the word and he'll be healed. No problem at all. This guy says, you got to show up. You got to be there. Come with me. You got to be there. And he repeatedly implores Jesus, come down, come down, come down. You got to come with me. You got it. My son's in trouble. You got to come with me. But when Jesus finally says, listen, go, your son lives. The man is content with that, and he starts off, right? Now, there is a problem here again with time period, because when he's going, he meets his slave, and his slave said, yesterday at the 7th hour. Now, we talked about this before in relationship to the woman at the well. What was the problem in the time frame? And here, I'm afraid that me and John MacArthur have a difference of opinion.
The day starts sundown.
Right, there's a Jewish reckoning of time and a Roman reckoning of time. And when we talked about the woman of the well, it said that she came at the 6th hour, right? And that was either noon or it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that. I can't remember. 6 o'clock, right? It was the evening. So it was either noon or at the evening. And it made more sense to me that it was at the evening, Roman reckoning. And the reason for that is that most women came to draw water when? In the cool of the evening, right? We have a similar problem with this one in that if you go by Jewish reckoning, this is like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so the man has to travel back to Capernaum, but when he meets his slave, he says, yesterday, Jesus told me X, right? He understands that it was the day before. Now, if Jesus had told him at 7 o'clock at night, then it would make more sense to me that the night would prevent his traveling, and so he would continue on his journey the next day. And so, because immediately after Jesus said, your son is healed, he starts on the journey. But if it's at night, if it's in the evening, then he's not going to continue on. But if it's in the daytime, he would have. So to me, it makes more sense for Roman reckoning. Why is this important? Not really. It's not really all that important what time it takes. I'm sorry to lead you on that segue, but it is. But in interpretation, we have to because it does come into play, say, at the crucifixion and at the resurrection, when you're talking about time periods and when things happen and how they line up with other things, it's important for us to understand when these things take place during the day. Because it's one of the things is that what is written down in the scriptures is not by accident. What is written down in the scriptures is there by divine appointment, that it should be there. And so it's meant that we should wrestle with the text in order to understand what is in the text, what it means, how it applies, how it illuminates the rest of Scripture. And so things like time periods, that it was the 7th hour, what does the 7th hour mean? And so we wrestle with that. In my opinion, it was in the evening, and I have read a number of commentators, and they are really split on it. So there is a great discrepancy there, but we know that the Father knew that it was at that hour that Jesus said to him, "Your son lives," and he himself believed, and his whole household. So here you have John recording that when Jesus said, "Go, your son lives," he believes. And then when he hears that it's at the 7th hour that he was healed, he believes. Same word, pisteuo, right? What's the difference? Well, both same guy. Same guy believes when he's told that your son lives, and the same guy believes when he hears that his son's been healed. What's the difference? What's that? Well, that would be strange. Why mention it twice then? If he's already believed the first time, then he's not going to suddenly believe again.
He needs confirmation. Does he believe that his son lives, and then the second time he believes in Jesus as Savior?
Right. John points out numerous times that they believed in him. They believed in him, right? And then they categorically demonstrate that they don't believe in him, right? And the difference for John is, he's writing this so that you might believe, is that there is a difference in belief. You can believe that Jesus can perform miracles, right? That's no problem. Lots of people believed in his ability, that he could do these things. They believed he could do these things. Did the Israelites believe that God could do stuff? Even the demons believe, right? They believed God was capable of doing these things. They did not believe in God's character. They did not trust him. They did not believe in his steadfast love. This guy goes from believing Jesus is a prophet and capable of healing his son, to believing in the character of Jesus. What John emphasizes is that Jesus is more than simply the prophet. Jesus is more than simply able to perform a miracle in person. He has control over space and time. He doesn't need to be there to heal the son because of who he is. And this man, it is implied that he comes to that realization that Jesus is more than simply a miracle worker. He's more than just a trick pony. He's more than just a guy who can do magic. And so he comes to the real, substantial faith. And we recognize the contrast here between what goes on with the Samaritans. How many miracles are recorded that Jesus does with the Samaritans? If you count that he told the woman everything that she had ever done, right? If you count that as a miracle, that's the miracle. But there's no record that he performs any kind of signs and wonders there. So what do they believe? They believe in him and his teaching and the substance. So when we're talking about those who worship in spirit and in truth, right? These people in Canaan are not believing on the basis of spirit and in truth. They just believe in the miracle, in the outward appearance, and not in the substance of who Jesus is. Okay, lastly, this caused me, and it's because I'm dense, but this caused me a little bit of confusion here. This again was the second, and I'm not alone, so I don't feel quite as bad. This again is the second sign that Jesus performed when he had come out of Judea into Galilee. Now, if it's the second sign, what is the first sign? Water into wine. Doesn't that seem just blatantly obvious? Yeah, my problem was the English reading. And I stumbled on the English reading because it says, this again was the second sign that Jesus performed when he had come out of Judea into Galilee. When did he come out of Judea into Galilee? Well, he came out of Judea into Galilee right here. And the sign of the water into wine was before, right? So what was his first miracle here? Well, it's the English translation. That's the problem. And that is that this can be, when he came out of Judea into Galilee, he performed this second sign, right? That reading would indicate to you that the first one was the water into wine, and this is the second sign miracle. Is this the second miracle he's performed? Obviously not, because we just discussed that he had performed signs and miracles, as it has said in chapter 2. So when he had cleansed the temple and went out, he performed signs and miracles. The other dead giveaway here is that in John 2:11 it says, of the water into wine, this beginning of his signs, right? Jesus did at Cana of Galilee. So this is the beginning. This is the first one. And the second one is the healing of the official's son. So it's pretty obvious, and I'm embarrassed that I didn't get that. But okay. So the other thing is that one of the things about this is that John is filling in gaps in the Synoptic Gospels and misunderstandings in the Synoptic Gospels. And one of the things I think that he's trying to emphasize here that I think is important is that when it talks about a prophet is not without honor except in his own country, it talks about the fact that he didn't perform many miracles in those areas because of their lack of faith. And I think one of the things John wants to correct in this, and in the subsequent miracles here, and in the previous miracles, is that there might have been, and there seems to be in our present day, an idea that God's ability is limited by our faith, right? And so he can't do these things. He is dependent on people's faith on whether he can do stuff. And you see this in popular culture, that the gods depended upon the belief of people in them in order to have power. And that is kind of crazy, but it is a belief. And so the idea is unless we have faith, God can't do anything. Well, no, God's God. He can do whatever he wants. But what is the problem with these people? They crave signs and miracles, right? They crave signs and wonders. They don't have faith. They just want this stuff. They just want to see the show, right? And so it is denied. Jesus is operating on whose authority? Who has instructed him to do these things? God the Father. And God the Father denies these people in Cana these signs and wonders that they are craving. because that's what they really want. You remember that Jesus gives bread to them, and then at the feeding of the 5,000, and then they come and they want more bread. And what does he do? Nuh-uh. Did he give them bread on the basis of their faith? No. Is he going to heal this next guy at the pool on the basis of his faith? No. Did he change the water into wine on the basis of faith? Nope. Unless you consider it the faith of his mom. But does he walk on water on the basis of somebody's faith? No. His miracles are on his own power, the power of indestructible life. God incarnate. That's where his power is, and he can do anything. But he is not permitted to do miracles in here because these people have rejected him.
I think that's important that it's a collective faith and not an individual.
That is true, yes. But even on an individual faith, we would say that there is a difference in the belief of those who believe on the miracles and crave more miracles and don't have real, true saving faith. So there is that also. So there, we have ended next week. We are going to go into the man who is at the well or at the pool, and we're going to go over that. That's got a lot of fun stuff to hash out on that one. Okay, so we're done.